This is something I get a lot of requests for, a cell phone holder with a 5x7 hoop. So the 5x7 hoop will make a nice folder for most phones. Some phones are a little bit longer, like this is my Samsung S22 Ultra. So it's not as super wide, but it is very long. And as you can see, it'll fit in here, but there's a lot showing. But in order to take care of that and still use your 5x7-inch hoop, you could simply make a bigger flap, which I included the file for. And with the bigger flap, when you put it in, it still sticks up about half an inch. But then you Velcro, and that is nice and safe. It's not going to go anywhere. And see, the phone is in there nice and tidy. And now you can put it on anything you want. Personally, I love these lanyards. And you can hang it crossbody, or you can hang it around your neck. I got this at Amazon. They're not real expensive. It also comes with a little wrist size one. And these are so quick and so easy to make. You'll be surprised. So let's get started. For your first hooping, you're going to need 2 pieces of 5x5-inch fabric if you're making the large tab. If you're making the small tab, you're going to need 2 pieces of 4x4-inch fabric. You're also going to need some lightweight fusible interfacing cut to the same size as your tab fabric. You're only going to need 1 piece of that. You're also going to need cutaway stabilizer in your 4x4-inch hoop. For your second hooping, you're going to need 2 6x8-inch pieces of fabric, 1 6x16-inch piece of fabric, 2 6x8-inch pieces of fusible fleece interfacing, and cutaway stabilizer in your 5x7-inch hoop. I used fleece interfacing for this project because it's nice and thin and it doesn't create a lot of bulk, and it's even lighter and thinner than 100% cotton batting would be. So you don't want your seams to be too bulky because your phone may not fit. So this is my suggestion for making these little holders. Okay, you're also going to need 3.5-inch piece of 5x7 to 7/8-inch wide grosgrain ribbon. I chose that because it is a stronger ribbon. Embroidery thread to match the fabric, a size 11 embroidery needle, painter's tape, clip, hook, or hardware of your choice, a 2-inch piece of hook and loop tape or Velcro, or you can use cam snaps or another kind of snap. You're also going to need your general sewing and embroidery supplies. If you're using the hook and loop tape for your closure, I recommend a good quality glue with good holding power. I used the E6000 and it has great holding power. And if you buy the Velcro in the adhesive, with the adhesive backings, I find that those stick to absolutely nothing. They just eventually end up coming off. So I just use the sew-in with the good quality glue. I've already prepared my fabrics for the project. My first piece is the 6x8 piece of fabric, and on the back I have some fusible fleece interfacing. If you don't want to use fusible fleece interfacing, I would use a cotton batting. You don't want anything really thick because it's going to really add some bulk and it may not fit your phone nicely. Then I have 1 6x8 piece of fabric with nothing on the back. Then I also have 2 5-inch square fabrics because I'm making the bigger flap. So I have 2 of those, and one has a light to medium weight fusible interfacing on it. You don't want anything too thick that's going to be, again, you don't want to cause bulk. And then for this piece of fabric, which measures 6 inches by 16 inches, I have the fleece interfacing fused to just this half. And then I folded this one over, and then I ironed it. Okay, so there's just one piece in between these 2 fabrics. I already have my file in my machine and my 4x4-inch hoop hooped with some cutaway stabilizer. A couple important things to remember is you have to do the tab first. If you don't do the tab first, you're not going to be able to assemble your bag completely. So always do your tab first. And I'm doing the wide tab for this one because my phone is a little bit longer for this bag, and the wide tab will cover the phone nicely and protect it so much better than the smaller tab. All that is explained in the directions. The first thing I'm going to do is put it in the machine and do the first stitch, which is the placement stitch for my tab. Okay, it's done in beige thread, so it might be kind of hard to see, but here's my placement stitches for my tab. So now I'm going to take my two 5 by 5 inch squares. Remember that I fused some lightweight fusible interfacing to the back of one of them. So I'm going to place this with the right side up, completely covering my stitches. And then I'm going to take the second piece and I'm going to place it with the right sides facing this. Now I am using a one-way fabric, which means if I don't place everything right, it's going to be upside down. And I chose the one-way fabric purposely so that I could help you if you've never worked with a one-way fabric. So as you can see, my 66 and all my license plates, they're all with the bottom here and the top there. Now with this fabric, I want to make sure this one is not upside down. I want it to be like that. So I'm going to place it with the right side down. Okay, and then I'm going to secure it with some tape. And you're going to notice that I do use a lot of tape when making these projects, but especially when I get to the end of the assembly of the bag. But do know, I use them more than once, so I can take off this piece of tape and I can use it 3 or 4 more times yet. Okay, that is nice and secure, so I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to stitch my last stop for the tab, and that's just going to basically be the stitching around the tab with the top open. Okay, so I've stitched my tab stitching all the way around, so now I'm going to take off my tape and put it to the side so I could use it later. And I'm going to remove this from the hoop. Now during this project you're going to remove the hoop from the machine a few times, but only remove the whole project after you've done your last stitching. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take my scissors and I'm going to cut about 1/4 inch away from the seam here. And then now for this part where it's opened up here, I just cut across like that. So my stitch is in there. Well, this one's a little there. Okay, now I'm going to use this tool. You could use whatever you normally use. And I'm going to turn it right side out. And then I'm going to take this, and you know what, I'm going to use the blunt end. I don't like to use the pointed end unless I'm pushing out corners. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go back to my ironing board now, and I'm just going to iron this nice and flat. Okay, my 5x7 hoop is has the stabilizer in. This is cutaway stabilizer for this project. You're going to want to use cutaway. And my machine is loaded with this file, so I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to stitch out my first step, which is just going to be the placement stitch. Okay, the placement stitch is there. Again, I'm using beige, but you can see it there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is place my piece of 6x8 fabric with the one that I have fused the fusible fleece to the back of, or fusible fleece interfacing I should say, and I'm going to put it right over those stitches. And this is what I want to make sure that when you're using your one-way fabric, that this is the bottom of the hoop, so this should be where the bottom of your fabric would be. So your fabric would be this way, okay? Because if you put it this way, it's going to be upside down, because this is always going to be your top. So I'm going to just add that there, and I want to make sure all my stitches are completely covered. And they are. So again, I'm going to use some tape. Tape it in place. For this particular step, you don't really need a whole lot of tape. Now for the next step that we're going to do, you're going to need a lot of tape. But that's okay, because you could use it more than once. Also, I like to use painter's tape. I don't like stitching through Scotch tape. Okay. Sometimes you do end up stitching through it. Now I'm going to take it back to the machine, and I'm going to stitch out my second stitching step, and that's going to stitch this fabric down to the stabilizer. So that's basically just your tack down stitch. Okay, my second stitching is complete. As you can see, this is stitched nicely to the stabilizer. I remove my jump stitches. Now there should be two of them, one on this side and one on the back. Now as you can see in this step, it also stitched these little side lines right there. And on this side, they're right there and right there. They're kind of hard to see, but they're just, I'm going to say they're about 1/4 of an inch down from the upper stitching line. This is because this is the placement stitch. These little lines are the placement stitch for your next piece, which is going to be the piece that you have folded in half with one side fused with the fusible fleece. And since you folded this in half, one side is going to be, I mean, this is the top edge. So one side is going to look upside down, while the other side is right side up. So when you place this on here, you're going to want to place the correct way with the fold at the top, and you're going to make this face this. So when you're looking at it, before you're assembling it, this is going to be upside down. Now if you have a fabric that has no special direction, then it doesn't matter. But this one does. So you want to make sure that your upper edge, the fold, is just to those lines, which is, like I said, about 1/4 of an inch down. You don't want to go above the line, because you're risking your next stitching to go right through this, and you don't want that. So you're just going to stitch it slightly below. Let me bring it up if you can see better. Okay, yeah, I think you can see now. So there's my stitching line, and then this is just dropped slightly below it, and it's right at those little marks. Those little marks are there so that you don't go above them. All right, so now I'm just going to tape this part in place. Now this is the area where I'm going to be doing a lot of taping, because you want to make sure that it's really secure. So I'm going to tape it at the sides. And for these pieces, you might want to use some fresh tape, because you don't want them to come apart or to crinkle on the corners. Now comes the trickier part. You're going to attach your flap and your ribbon. I used a 3.5 inch piece of ribbon. I'm going to put my hardware now on this ribbon. So I'm going to slip the ribbon through, and then the hardware will be hanging from here. And this is where you have some options. You can use one of these so that the bag could be clipped to anything. Here, maybe you can see that better there. So the bag can be clipped to anything. This is a D-clip. A hook, if you're going to hang it from another type of a hook, like, for example, this. Okay, so you would want that. I don't know. You can even use ones that you could take off and put back on, like this, or those little carabiner clips, whatever they are. That's up to you. But if you're going to use one of these, you're going to need to attach it right now. So I'm going to put it through. I'm using the square one because the item that is going to hold my bag works better if I use a square. Alright, so now what you're going to do is put it on. See how that's on there like that. And you're going to put this in the exact center along this upper edge. Okay, so I like to make this about 1/2 inch above that stitching line. Okay, and then to know that it's exactly in the center, here's a nice little guide, as you can see. You can use that as a guide for your center. So what I'm going to do is take one of these pieces of tape, and I'm just going to tape it here tape it there to hold it in place. Now for here, what you're going to want to do is use another piece of tape to keep that hardware from moving, because when you carry this to your machine or while it's stitching, it could be very easy for this hardware to slip and go under your needle, and that's the last thing you want. Okay, now what you're going to do is take your tab, and you're going to decide which side you want to show on your bag. And I want this side to show. So what I'm going to do is place this side down, and I'm going to place it right over my ribbon and my folded fabric, and I'm going to place this exactly centered as well. This is fairly easy to center without even anything because it's so big. So it's probably about 3/8 of an inch on each side. It's kind of hard to see, but I want it about 1/4 inch above. I want it 1/4 inch above this line here, my stitching line. So it's probably going to be about a 1/2 inch above the folded edge here. And then as you can see, there's about 4 or 5 stitches there, about 4 or 5 stitches there. So it's nice and centered. And now what I'm going to do is secure this with tape. Okay, now you can see your tab is placed and ready to be stitched, and under your tab, which it's under now, but it's going to be exactly where you want it after it's stitched. So you're going to just make sure it's nice and flat there, and then what you're going to do is you're going to place some tape right here. The reason I do that is because it's so easy for the foot on your embroidery machine to get caught up on there, and that's something you don't want to happen. And if you're using painter's tape, don't worry about stitching through it. So I like that to be nice and secured, and yes, I use a lot of tape, but it's not expensive, and my projects always come out perfect. So now I'm going to put it on this side. Okay, so now that should go right through there with no issues. There is one thing I want to mention. On one of my bags I previously made, I had to shut my machine off because I left the house, and when I turned it back on, my needle actually moved to the center because I had to reset my file so that it would go to the step that I needed instead of step 1. So my needle ended up right there, and when it moved across, it hit that, and I had to take it out and redo that part. So if you do have that issue, or if you're sure that your needle's going to start from the center, just simply take a piece of tape like this. And then that will hold that down and you won't have that problem. Okay, so now I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to stitch this part. Okay, now here's a tip that is going to come in really handy. As you can see with this little flap right here is about a little over a 1/4 inch away from that side line. So if you're worried that your presser foot's going to get caught up on there when it goes to this area, just simply take a piece of tissue wrap and secure it in place with some tape, and it'll glide right over and you won't have to worry about that. Mine was close. I didn't have to do it, but I'll tell you, it's probably best if you do it as a precaution, because you went through all this trouble and then you're going to get to this part and it could really completely mess up your needle. So I would just put that on anyways. Little piece of tape there, little piece of tape there. You could even use tearaway stabilizer for this, and you don't need a whole bunch of it, just enough to cover this general area here. Okay, all your tape has been removed, except for this one, which is fine. You could leave that in place until the end because you do not want that little ring moving. I'm going to secure this in place with some tape. I like to keep my tape out of the stitching line. It's really no big deal, because if you're using painter's tape, it's not going to gum up your needle like Scotch tape would. If your needle goes over those. I'm going to go back to my machine now and stitch my final step. Okay, so I've removed the project from the hoop, and I've removed my tape. So now what I'm going to do is cut it. Now this here is the lining. Okay, so what I like to do is cut kind of like a notch out. There's the beginning of my stitching. So I like to cut a notch. And I'll explain why. And you'll see why actually when I go to stitch that closed. So about 1/4 of an inch away, and then clip your corners. Okay, now I'm going to end right here. That is where my stitching line ends. And I'm going to just do that like that. Okay, so here's my lining. And this is my lining piece as well. So what I'm going to do is take these. You see how I've got my hole there for the turning right side out? And I'm going to place this down, and I'm going to place the other piece down. Okay, and now I'm going to cut away this extra stuff. You don't want that bulk in there. Definitely don't. Okay, so now, if you're using a regular fusible, if you're using a regular cotton batting, you won't have this fused to there. So since I used fusible, I am going to take this piece here and separate it, and then that will relieve some of the bulk. If you use cotton and batting instead, it'll already be separated. But since this one was fused, it would really cause too much bulk. So now I'm going to turn this right side out. And I'm going to push out my corners. Okay, now I'm going to close up my lining. Don't worry about this being upside down, because you're going to turn it one more time. So what I'm going to do is take my lining and prepare this so I can stitch through it. I like to use a whip stitch and then just stitch the opening closed. If you don't want to sew, you can always use fusible seam tape or something like liquid stitch and seal that up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and whip stitch this closed, and I'll be back. Okay, now I have stitched my opening closed, as you can see. Now I turn it in right side out one more time. So I'm going to go in through here, and I'm going to turn that right side out. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my iron, and I'm going to give it a super quick press. Okay, so it's all nice and pressed. And for this particular bag, I'm going to use some Velcro, or hook and loop tape, whatever you want to call it. And I do that because it's a wider strap, and I just feel like it'll have a little more grasping power. You could use a cam snap if you prefer. So I've cut a piece about 2 inches, so, and I'm going to put my phone in, and now you're going to see how nice this covers the phone for a 5x7 hoop. So I got my phone in there, and you can see this phone extends about, I don't know, maybe ½ inch. So I'm going to take my flap and close it over the phone. Okay, so it'll be, I want it to be, you know, snug, but I don't want it to be really loose. So what I'm going to do now is take a marking pen. Okay, this is one of those invisible pens. So I'm just going to draw a line because I want my Velcro to be about there. So what I'm going to do is put it under here, like that. Okay, I want it as close to the bottom as I can get it. And then what I'm going to do is just draw a line right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is close that back up, and then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to draw another line right here. And that is where I'm going to place my Velcro, so it's going to line up. Okay, you can see these 2 lines, they meet. Okay, so that's where I'm going to place my bottom edge of my Velcro. I'm going to glue one here, and I'm going to glue the other one right there. So when it's closed, they will line up nicely. Okay? So I'm going to take my phone out now, and I'm going to take 1/2 of my Velcro, and I love this E6000 glue. If you're going to use this Velcro glue, if you're going to use Velcro, it's best to glue it on, because otherwise you're going to have to figure out where to place it before you even stitch it. And quite frankly, that's too much math for me. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue right here. You don't want too much because you don't want it going over the edge, but you really want it to be secure so it doesn't come off. So there's 1/2. So I'm going to place it just above this line, and this line will wash away later with a little bit of water. If I would have used this edge, it would have disappeared, but I'm using this edge. Mark be gone. You could use a pencil too if that's all you've got. And this one is going to be at the line. Actually, I'm going to cover that one so it goes closer to the edge. Okay. I'll put the cap on this glue. And I use sew-in because I find that the stuff that has the sticky adhesive on the back doesn't stick to anything very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry completely dry before I even mess with anything. So I'm going to come back and check it in a few hours. At that time I can also remove that blue. Once your Velcro's dried, double check your corners because they need to be really secure, because that's what's going to pull your Velcro right off. And I see right here I could use just a teeny bit, and right here. So after this video is finished, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of glue underneath those corners that are up a little bit. And then I'm going to also get rid of this line. So now you just put your phone in. Now look, this is a Samsung 22 Ultra, which is your longer phone. I mean, it has plenty of room side by side, but it is longer than my other phones. Here's an S10. It's got plenty of room side by side, and it's got plenty of room here. So it will fit that nicely. But I am using this phone right now. So I'm going to do that. And then I can clip it to whatever I want. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it inspires you to create something fun for yourself or for someone else. If you want to make your own cell phone holder in the 5x7-inch hoop, I'll provide the link to the file in the description below. Be sure to refer to the image with sizing information in my description photos. I'll also provide the link to the 2 lanyards that I personally own and love. If you travel a lot as I do, you'll wonder why you haven't bought one before now. If you found this video valuable, please like, subscribe, comment, or share. And thank you for watching.